think the reality of any small business is that you're going to have great days and you're going to have terrifying days. I mean, in the first year, I had 3 times where I either had to put payroll on a credit card or I looked down at my wedding ring to think about hawking it so I could make payroll, right? Believing in what we were going to do and what the ultimate outcome was a necessity. And I think for me, there's always terrifying moments. And I said it early. I think it's really important to have those people who have been through an entrepreneurial journey, because everyone who has been through it had tough days, right? We had tough days when we were corporate employees. Of course, we have tough days when we're calling all the shots and we're an entrepreneur. Having those that can like talk us off the ledge and can talk us through, like, you got this. It's hard, but this too shall pass. Here's, step 1, 2, and 3. Just take those 3, one bite of the elephant at a time. Sometimes it can seem like the elephant's getting ready to charge, and you just got to step back from it. What's the first, second, and third bite I'm going to take? And eventually it will all get done. But I think it's having that support network around you that has been through it and can help you know that this too shall pass, because that's all you need to hear. I think those that jumped off the cliff, they have something in them that's very special. And it's a resilience to get through those tough days. Sometimes you just need to hear you can do it, and surrounding yourself with people who will tell you that. It's somewhere in there, but it can be really overwhelming. And to me, there were probably days where if I went to negative people who are like, yeah, you probably should go back to corporate America, you know who those people are. That is not who you want to go talk to when you're in that moment of entrepreneurial panic. You need to go to those that have lived the same thing and persevered and pushed through it. That would be my biggest takeaway of what I felt in that first year. I love my mother, but my mother is not someone I would have gone to when I was having a tough day, because for my first 5 years, she was like, why aren't you using your CPA? You went to all this, trouble, and go back and use your degree and go back to corporate America. I'm like, that's not who I could go to her for many things, right? A broken up relationship, or my kids driving me nuts, or whatever it is. But about the business, that was not where to go. But I knew where to go to get that little bit of, you got it, talk it out, vent, then put your big girl pants on and just go make it happen, right?
There have been so many times where I questioned the business, the industry, the passion, the people. There are so many things that come at you when you're an entrepreneur. And there are often times, and I'll speak for myself, but I know it goes well beyond me, where it does feel like it's a nightmare. One of the key components is having that operating system. And how do you go about doing stuff at your place, and everybody gets it and they are following along with it. And that certainly helps you gain control. And so I found that to be really useful. Of course, we use the EOS process, and there are others out there that people can look at, but having that process was really key. So losing customers, we had at one point a really large customer that was taking up a high percentage of our business, and we lost that customer. And those are scary times. Right now, with COVID, being an office equipment dealer and nobody's in their office. I mean, when this hit in March of 2020, I was living in Detroit, downtown Detroit. I looked out my window and there wasn't a soul out. It was a work day, and I was used to walk into my office and there'd be tons of people and nobody was out. Nobody. It was nobody out there. And I called Joel, my business partner, and I said, we got to huddle up with the leadership team. We're in for it. If what I'm seeing out my window right now keeps going, we're going to be in for it for a while. And that proved to be true because we're still dealing with it. And so, those are the things where you question, what am I doing this for? But, to me, the pros always have outweighed the cons. I love the quote unquote freedom, because in many ways, it isn't the freedom you think of. And, it's not like you're just freewheeling, like, I'll just do whatever I want. But, you do have the freedom to kind of figure some things out and chart the path. And it's painful. That path is painful at times, but it's your call. Nobody else is telling you. You're not following along. And the customers, they tell you, and then it's up to you to listen and chart the path. And if you don't like what they're saying, you can say, I don't want to do that, and chart a different path. And it's all up to you. And I love that.
I woke up every day thinking that people aren't doing their jobs. How do I get them to do their job? What's the best motivator? I had, crises that would come up in my business, and I'd be the one to handle the issue. I, candidly just didn't have the right integrator in my business. And I was good at buying stores, and I got to a point where we were too big for me to run the day-to-day operations myself. And I had, an individual that worked with me for a long time that just really wasn't, the business outgrew him as well. So, that's when I went to EOS and talked to Gino, because I was living the nightmare. Like, I was nervous all the time. I didn't sleep at night. I was, chronically thinking about my business. I'd go on vacation, be on the phone the whole time.
I enjoyed that segment of the Entrepreneurial ebook, the nightmare and the dream. So I do have more qualities of the dream right now than I did of the nightmare. But yeah, I was hey, I'm working 14 hours a day. I'm coming in on the weekends. Look at me. I was mistaking activity for accomplishments, and being busy but not getting anywhere was just killing me. You're always exhausted. You can't contribute to anything very effectively at work. It was not the badge of honor that I thought it was to put in long days and long nights and weekends. And I had employees that were coming in a little bit late and leaving a little bit early. That's grown to be one of my first indications, actually, that an employee is just not part of the business anymore. Once they start coming in a few minutes late every morning and it's consistent, it's just a matter of time. And then, they'll find out that they're just not cut out for what it is we need them to do. And I saw that quite a bit. I didn't know what I was looking at the time until I started reading this chapter. And it's kind of hit the nail on the head with that one. So fortunately, we made that transition. It really came down to, a lot of those problems were solved with the right employees, getting the right people involved with the business, and finding out what they were passionate about and just encouraging that. So we've actually shuffled people around within the business here, from technician to upfront, and then, from a particular service advisor position to more of a different employee management position. And I think we've done a good job at identifying strengths and weaknesses and keeping the people we wanted to keep, and just creating the best position for them.
I certainly burn the candle at both ends a lot, both with family, especially when you have young kids growing up that were athletic and in sports and running the business. But I never looked at it like a nightmare. I don't think like that. So I just get up and go every day. I have a plan, and I dream about things that I want to do and goals. And as soon as I click one, I go get another one. So it was never a nightmare. My life never had a nightmare experience. I had issues, believe me, I had 1995 and then the recession of 2008. But I was lucky enough to have a really great wife and a couple kids that really have great relationships with me. So I was always pretty grounded in that regards. And that always, kept me cool, because I always knew that I had them. But there were scary moments, but not nightmares.
When you own a business, you take the good and the bad, and you take the tough and the challenging times. You take the client losses, you take the feeling responsible for why you didn't get a piece of business. I think that for me, one of my biggest struggles, I can be very sensitive. I like my employees to all get along. I'd like for us to be one big happy family. That's not always realistic. There are issues that come up. And so I think that, when you don't own the business, you can say, well, that's not really my problem. But when you do own the business, it's all your problem. And at the end of the day, the buck stops with you. I always laugh when I'm having a bad day. I'll say to my management team, does anyone want to buy a business? Got a business for sale. Anyone want one? It just always makes me laugh, and it adds a little bit of levity to some, really lousy days. But we all have bad days. Whether you work for someone or you own your business, that's life. You got great days, good days, bad days, and everything in between. So you just got to learn to live with it.
We became successful almost immediately. And, a little bit of fear of the unknown. I'd never had a payroll before of any significance, really at all. I knew how to sell stuff and I knew how to implement systems, but I didn't know the business side. We did have a fair amount of dysfunction in our company when we first started working with Gino. But there was a lot of stuff that was going right. So I wouldn't have called it a nightmare, but I know what he's talking about, where you can really become a slave to the business. I would say we suffered from that a bit. Our biggest problems were mostly, we had some partner conflict, and we just lacked good kind of business and financial acumen. So we just weren't good business people. We were good engineers. The three owners were all engineers. So we could do the work, but we didn't know how to really build a business.
I think the closest thing I can think of for being trapped in the nightmare, God, it's almost like the things you look back upon most fondly. But when you're making pops the way that we were in the beginning, we had a popsicle maker that was about the size of like a washing machine. It could freeze 88 pops at a time. We handbag them. Our kitchen was like very hot, so we would go sit in the freezer to bag the pops so they wouldn't melt while they were doing it. And obviously you're trying to sell as much as you can, so we would have these large sales that we'd commit to on the spot and then come home and be like, okay, we've got 19 hours to make 1,200 pops. Our machine makes 88 in 50 minutes. We literally have to have somebody doing this for the next however many hours. So I think there were definitely times of the monotony of like putting sticks in the stick maker or sealing the pops, where you're just like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Then again, like that is, like I said, that's also the time that like the people that I was working with at that time that I still talk to today, and some that are still working here, like that's the good old days. Like, oh man, what would we do to not have to be glued to our email and just get to go make a fun new flavor for somebody without having to like charge them an R&D fee and figure out how many whatever it's going to cost, since it's going to cost them extra if they add this ingredient. So I think there's that piece in the very early days for sure, that it's good and bad. Yeah.
When I talk about the cleaning business, that was a different kind of nightmare. That was I'm in the wrong business, different than, which I think maybe what Gino might actually be referring to, was working 100 hours a week because you haven't really built the infrastructure. You don't have a leadership team. You don't have your systems and processes in place such that you have your machine and your flywheel is going such that you can now focus on bigger things and so on and so forth. I mean, he uses the word entrepreneurial nightmare. I never thought of it that way in my current business, because I still loved it, even though I was working, 6.5 days a week, 70, 80 hours a week. But what I learned as we grew, and with a lot of help and guidance and direction from Gino and his tools, was really to kind of systematize and really help doing that. Then hiring some other really key people in my organization that helped us take the next level.